Hey guys, Magna back here for some more Starcraft tutorials. Today we're going to be talking about playing against Storm in TvP. Most notably, I have it capitalized and exclamation pointed. It's all about positioning against Storm, and to a lesser extent it's also about micro control, scouting, etc. I know a lot of Terran players really hate playing against Storm because it seems like Protoss can just click wherever they want stuff to die. But you have to think about that differently. You can't just run into Storm and expect to win. You have to be able to outposition the Terran, or rather outposition the Protoss, and kind of get them into a position where their Storm just doesn't do anything. So we're going to show you guys how to do that, since I know a lot of people really dislike playing against Storm. So here we go. We're going to be taking a look at Neeb. He's one of my favorite Terrans, especially against Protoss. I really love this guy. He's fighting Minigun. Minigun is known for a lot of different strategies. He's a very versatile Protoss. So from Neeb, the first thing you obviously need to confirm is that they are going Storm. And we've talked about that a little bit in the scouting videos, but most of the time it's really just to scan at a particular time or find ways to scout, whether it's with a drop or something, just to see what kind of tech is on the way. And once you know, then you can start kind of planning out the rest of your game according to what you've seen. So in this particular game, Neeb is going for just a pretty conservative expand with a gas. This kind of looks like a factory play to me. Doesn't look like anything too crazy, so we may see a command center come down here in just a little bit. And one of the things about this matchup is that both players tend to expand really early, because there's not a whole lot both players can do against one another. So reactors on the way. Just after 2 Marines, we're going to see a command center drop here from Neeb. All this stuff isn't terribly important. If you need help with build orders and stuff like that, I do suggest openers to get you into this stage of the game. But it is going to be a factory. So this looks like some type of mine play. Mine play is going to be the future of this matchup, especially against Storm. So this is going to be kind of... I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but we're going to talk more about mines in a separate video. This is just more flexible ways to deal with Storm. You don't absolutely need mines, but just note that it is going to be a strong way to deal with that in the future. So Neeb is continuing to put stuff out here. Mine is on the way. He's producing a starport. He's going to drop these in the mineral line. And with the new mines especially, you can expect a lot of damage to be done if they don't react properly to this. And especially a lot of Storm openers, you should realize, actually get pretty delayed detection most of the time. As far as the Protoss progressions back here, if you can scout this out, most of the time they'll open up with a Forge and a Twilight Council before a Robo, so their detection will be pretty slow. Sometimes they'll open up with a Oracle as well, so you need to be aware of stuff like that, which is why I really like the mine openers. But just staying on top of your scouting, using scans fairly generously here and there is going to help out a lot. We're going to see this a little different actually. Minigun is going to go for a Robo first. It's going to be for a little bit later Storm, but we won't talk too much about those timings, considering those are pretty hard to punish at anything other than the super high levels. So just because he realizes Oracles can be a possibility, he goes ahead and just drops the mine in his mineral line for the time being until the medevac is out. And he scans just to see what's going on. He sees everything. He can see the Robo. He sees the Forge, so he realizes there shouldn't be any Oracles or anything like that. This is way too much stuff too early to be Oracle. So he'll be fine. He can take that mine out of his mineral line here any second. And he's going to eventually get into a point where he needs to verify what the follow-up is, because seeing a Robo this fast doesn't necessarily mean Colossus. They can just produce observers, which is what you're seeing here, and they can go wherever they want after that. They don't have to necessarily go into Colossus. They could do Blink, they could do a Fast Third, they could do whatever they're comfortable with, and you need to be willing to react at a later time. So more barracks coming up here, of course, as we've seen all the time here from Terran. 3 barracks, getting a medevac production started, really normal stuff here in the mid-game. And I mean, we've talked about different builds and stuff like that. Most of the time, just find a way to get to this stage of the game comfortably. Now we see the Twilight Council on the way. This still doesn't necessarily mean Storm yet, so Neeb still needs to be on top of his scouting. I think this medevac got pushed away by some stalkers or something, because he's not being too aggressive with that. Starting his engineering bay. This is one thing you should realize too. One of the biggest things with Storm openers is that Protoss is going to want to buff their Zealots with armor upgrades. And you can even see armor is already about 75% done here from the Protoss. If you fall behind on your upgrades and you can't deal with those Zealots because your attacks are just too weak, then you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble here. This is one part of Neeb's build that's really going to suffer quite a bit against the Storm play, is that his upgrades are going to be pretty late. So you need to find a way to get these upgrades going really quickly. And against Storm especially, you need to find a way to either get a faster third base if you realize it's Storm on the way and you realize that they're going to be a little more passive about it. And if you get a third base, you actually just want to make a bunch of bunkers, like 3 or 4 bunkers, because Storm is actually not that great at breaking bunkers. They usually need things like a lot of range units, maybe Immortals, stuff like that. So if you decide to take the faster third, just drop a lot of bunkers and be prepared to hold a counterattack and continue to scout them. Maybe you can drop them to keep in their base for a little while. But you need to find a way to do that. Otherwise, a good way to deal with Storm openers is to run continual aggression over and over. So one form of aggression could be moving out before stim is done. So let's say you get there with just a handful of units. It obviously wouldn't be off of a factory play, so we'd have to imagine you went barracks before factory. Multiple barracks before factory, that is. So you could do something like a before stim timing, force the Nexus cannon, then you could move back. You could come back up here once the Nexus cannon wears off with whatever units you have out at the time. If they drop another one, you move back. You just keep doing that over and over until they run out of Nexus cannon energy, and then most of the time, a lot of players will have a hard time dealing with that. So that's one way to do it, but this is a different way. What we're going to see from Neeb here is being a lot more conservative and just kind of playing out to the tempo that the Protoss plays. So here comes the Templar Archives right now. He stims up here, and you'll notice he forces the Nexus cannon, like we were talking about before, and he just picks up and leaves. So he forced this for nothing, and that's exactly the type of things that you want to do. With Storm openers especially, they're going to be super low on units. This is one of the downsides as far as running Storm from a Protoss perspective, is that your units are so low that you're vulnerable to a lot of timings, especially repeated timings. So he's being overly safe and dropping the Nexus cannon as soon as he possibly can. So forcing that is actually a really great play. I don't want this to be overstated, or rather understated. Forcing the Nexus cannon when you have no inkling of attacking right now is perfect. So anytime you can make them waste their Mothership Core energy, it's going to make that a lot harder for them to get out on the map later on. So you can even see stim just now getting started. This is a really late stim, pretty late combat shields, and especially pretty late +1 attack. So Neeb is going to go for the route we talked about before. He's going to take a faster third command center. About a 9-minute third command center, and he needs to be on top of what the Protoss is doing. He needs to know when the Protoss takes a third, so you can just sit a Marine there, and he needs to know that in the meantime he should be ready to build up bunkers here so he doesn't die to just a straight up all in here from minigun. So we're going to see that here in just a second. So continue to go on here. Producing a Reaper, that's got to be a mistake. So yeah, he's just going to continue to try and harass her just a little bit. You'll notice that he's not losing any units, and this is a big deal here, because if you lose a lot of units, especially early on against a Storm opener, and if you're trying to take a third base at the same time, then you have nothing to hold off their aggression. So continuing on here, we're going to see the Terran, like we talked about, getting that early third base, getting a second eBay, and also getting the armory so he can continue his upgrades. Staying up on your upgrades is a really big, important factor of playing against Storms here. So, like I said, stay up on your upgrades. Adding production on here as is appropriate, like we talked about in the macro video. He needs to always be able to spend his money, and he's just trying to continually harass over and over here with his units. You'll notice he just keeps dropping out 1 or 2 units and then picking them up and running away as soon as the Protoss starts to threaten. And you'll notice, look how tiny of a Protoss army this is. This is hardly anything. And this is what you're going to see from a Storm opener. A lot of times they just won't have a lot of units because they're being greedy and they need to get that Storm out, and they think that they can play their advantage once they get the Storm to that point. So the Protoss, I think he knows about the third base. Yeah, he's seen it. So he's going to try and take his own third, and that'll mean that Neeb doesn't need to worry too much about putting bunkers up at home. So Neeb's going to start getting aggressive instead. So starting to move out here, and this is where we're going to start talking about positioning. One of the worst things from a Protoss perspective is having to attack with Storm. And by that I mean, if you're playing Storm, you always want this Terran to be moving toward you while you're landing Storms. So if the Terran is starting to run at this army, and the Protoss can just walk away and land Storms as he walks away, that's perfect for the Protoss. So what you should be trying to do is getting them to move toward you with their army by getting superior position on the map. So let's say, for example, these armies were a little bigger. Let's say Neeb's entire army was across the map right now, and he was able to get a decent spread on his army, somewhere over here, and Minigun was somewhere right here. Minigun would have to walk all the way over here, wait for his slow Templar, and Neeb has all the position that he wants to the point where it forces Protoss to come over and deal with that, or else he's going to start losing important things. So that's going to be the biggest way to deal with Storm, is to get positioning that the Protoss wants, and to force the Protoss to attack at you, rather than you attacking into them. Anytime you attack into them, if they have Storm, there's no way you should be able to get good trades against that, and it's all about positioning. So we're going to start to see this just a little bit. Now you'll notice if he continues to be aggressive here, these are just like almost auto-cast storms here for minigun rather. He can storm all over this army, but you still, if you're in this type of position, you need to find a way to get this position. You need to get somewhere that the Protoss needs to defend, otherwise they will lose stuff. And another way you can do that is you can try to bait storms and make him miss with those. So that's what we're going to see just a little bit. So he needs to notice that he's not being too aggressive. He's being really careful about this. He's not just trying to run in there and win, because that's usually what people die to when they try to fight storm, and it doesn't work. We were talking about mines before, and these mines are starting to be added on. And those mines can help you gain position as well, because if the Protoss tries to attack into mines, then they're going to lose a lot of units trying to do that. They can use things like hallucination, but that's pretty rare. You don't see that very often. So we're going to see Neeb starting to set this up just a little bit. Again, moving out with more units. And this is the type of aggression window. About 12 minutes is when you're going to start being super aggressive against a storm player, because their transitions and stuff are so rigid, and it's on them to basically not die for the next 3 or 4 minutes to your aggression. So if you do the right aggression, and if you don't get too aggressive and walk your whole army into storms, then you should be in good shape. So again, continuing to rally forward here. You obviously do need to build them up just a little bit, just in case they do anything like drops or run-bys with pylons that are out on the map or something. So Neeb, again, he's not being too aggressive, and as soon as he realizes he's in a bad spot, he just runs away. He's going to lose these units for free, so that was kind of a shame. So he needs to be a little bit careful here. Again, he doesn't want to take too much storm damage, and if you start taking storms like this, you just need to be able to select your army and just move them out of the way. Keeping these units alive is what this is all about, obviously, and not running into a defensive Protoss is really important. So you can see him just micro out of there the best he can, and you'll notice he's trying to bait storms a little bit. He knows that if he just runs forward and attacks, it's not going to work. So all he's doing is just running forward and then dodging back, trying to bait out these storms and make him waste energy. So if he can do that, he's only lost a few Marines here, as well as the units that were up front. He needs more medevacs too. He needs to stay on top of that. And you also need to know that a Colossus transition is possible. So I think, especially if you took this early of a third base, you should take maybe one of your gases and start adding on extra starport production. Maybe another starport, even just a naked one for a third, because the Colossus transition is going to happen eventually. So you need to be on top of that if you're not going to respond too hard to the storm. So we're going to continue to see him try to micro out of this. You'll notice that he's never really engaging as far as full on in an attack here. And if you can ever pull his army really far out of the way here and maybe get a drop, or the rest of your army somehow over here, then you'll be in that great position that we were talking about before. But thus far, Neeb's just being patient. You'll notice he's keeping his supply lead by just a little bit. He's not just hardcore running into mines. Again, you will, or rather running into storms. Occasionally you will have to deal with little counterattacks like this, so you want to make sure you are keeping some units back if there is a warp prism on the map. Maybe you can burrow some mines somewhere like we just saw them hit the Zealots. And this was before the patch too, so mines are going to be even stronger than what's shown in this video. So Neeb's still progressing forward. Since he sees this army right here, one thing you can do is you can stem up just a few units and try to pick off Templar. You don't want to get too aggressive with that. Honestly, once he sees these units, which you can see them now, I would just run away immediately, but we'll have to see what he chooses to do. And yep, he tries to do that, but he gets time warped. He just turns around and kills a Templar. If you can pick off Templar with little groups of units like this, and that'll put you in a really great spot. Considering, from the Protoss perspective, once again, if they ever run out of storms, then they're basically dead. They have no way to answer this army. So he basically made the Protoss use several storms. You can see another one coming down right on top of this army. This is why you can't afford to attack into them. So he should just run away from that. And yeah, we can see that happening right now. And of course, running away as well with Zealots chasing you will deal damage to his own Zealots, so that's a good little side thing as well. Now he's going to start demanding position with these mines. So these mines are basically going to say, this position is mine. And if your army is down here, and you start getting sloppy, I can just walk into your natural, and you're going to have to walk over my mines to engage me. So you want to use these mines to demand position. And that's what we're going to see here a little bit from Neeb. You want to spread these out just a little bit to make it so that if he tries to just box all of his stuff and A-move at you, then his he's going to lose basically all of his zealots to your mines, and if you run your marines and stuff away from the mine detonations, then you should be totally fine against that. So going to see him start to walk up here just a little bit. Once again, you can't just walk into storms, so he realizes that. As soon as he sees a Templar, he turns around, and he needs to continue to be careful here. But if the Protoss gets too aggressive, you can just burrow your mines, keep running your marines and marauders away, and if these mines ever get a big detonation on these zealots, or maybe even better on the Templar, then they will absolutely dominate. So you see him, as soon as he burrows, the Protoss just turns around immediately, and Neeb's continuing to just try and demand position. You need to just continue to shark around, go one side or the other, try to see if they mess up somewhere. He burrows his mines as soon as he sees the zealots coming in here. And again, he wants the Protoss to be attacking at him with the storms, because they're a lot harder to hit in that circumstance. So, a storm coming down here, there's a lot of marauders, and being pretty marauder heavy is a good way to tank some of these storms. So he just walks right through it. He's trying to get a Templar here. I'm going to slow this down just a little bit so you can watch. Again, another storm, you need to be willing to just walk away from it, reheal, come back a little bit later. And we're starting to see minigun gain a little bit of traction here, but Neeb should be in a good spot. So another storm, he's again just walking away from the Templar, being aggressive. He burrows the mines, and he's trying to snipe the Observer here with that scan, by the way. If you can ever do that, that'll be a really good thing with your mines. But Neeb, again, notice the constant aggression here. He's always keeping Protoss on his side of the map, and if he continues to do that, and if he can get good enough trades, then he'll be fine. This is exactly what I'm talking about. If you can ever get Protoss sleeping on the job here, his army's in the wrong position, if you can gain this position with your mines and you can force them to engage into you, then they're going to be in really bad shape, and I think Minigun's starting to realize that. So he's going to get the mines burrowed. This is about as good of a position as he's gotten all game. Mines start to burrow, he stims his army, and he just needs to control his bio away from the mine explosions. So you can see this start to come up here. Some mine shots starting to go off here and there, killing a lot of zealots, or at least weakening them pretty badly. Just microing away from the storms is what's going on here. Now the Colossus is out, so you need to realize that this was always a possibility, is them supplementing with Colossus, which is why I recommended the extra starport once you start mining off of this third base pretty healthily. So he could be prepared for that, but he's just going to continue to stay aggressive here and continue to try and not take any damage from storms. And eventually, if they have no storms, even with Colossus with this large of an army, then they should eventually die. Notice that now he's starting to get a little bit too aggressive. You can see him pushing a lot of these units forward to try and kill the Colossus and Templar, but notice how much damage he's taking from the storms while he does that. So you never want to attack into storms. Still, he's doing alright though. He's able to tank all the damage from that. He got good enough mine hits. The mines burrow right next to the Archons. These are going to be amazing shots. They kill basically an entire Archon themselves. And now he's broken minigun because he was able to continue to finagle position over and over. In that one positioning with his mines, he was able to get good enough fight and good enough detonations on those to where he's able to start pushing minigun back a little bit. This type of circumstance, if this Protoss is this far away, again, you want positioning against Storm, and you want positioning overall against Protoss as a whole. So if their army is this far away, and they're starting to really be pushed back quite a bit, you can just load up in your medevacs and go up into the main. It's going to take them a long time to recover there. So that's what we're going to see. At least I hope that's what we're going to see a little bit here from Neeb. It's been a little while since I watched this. Of course, grabbing the Observer against mines is going to be great. Still trying to attack here. Burrows the mines, runs his units away. You can see how many units these mines kill if they connect. So the mine explosions are really good right now for Neeb. He's just trying to pick apart this army the best he possibly can, but the mines are doing so much work here. Even just weakening the zealots so your army can kill them really easily is a big, big win. Now the switch off of Storm has officially happened, and you need a way to handle this. Either you need a way to multi-prong them so hard that they can't recover with their Colossus, or you need to have the Viking production ready to go. And that's one thing Neeb has been slacking on just a little bit, but he's done enough damage, and he's going to choose the positioning route to try and win this game rather than the tech route. So by this point, this is where you can start to pull the Protoss apart. If they ever run out of storms here and they're exclusively on Colossus tech, their blink is going to be pretty late here. You can see it's not quite done, and you can start pulling them apart from multiple positions. So Neeb has part of his army in here, doing a little bit of damage. He can always pick up and go away if he needs to. In the meantime, he's moving the Protoss army out of position so he can kill this fourth base, so he can maybe get good positioning on this third with his mines. So that's what we're going to continually see here from Neeb. This game's almost over here because Neeb has gotten such good trades, and one more good fight is going to do it. You can see the mines burrowing now. This is what I'm talking about with positioning. Now the Protoss has to cross this area, or they have to walk into this weird choke point in order to deal with this army. These are the type of opportunities you need to look for. Is how can I force the Protoss to fight into an engagement that they don't want to take? And wow, this video is getting really long, really fast. So we've talked about a lot of this already. You can see just dodging the storm here, picking up his medevacs, getting out of there. Now the Protoss army is way out of position, and Neeb's starting to regather here outside of the third base for Protoss. Going to start killing the Colossus Bay. Any sort of tech pickoffs you can get are great. Again, burrowing the mines once again to hit these Zealots, doing an excellent job there. Starting to get on top of the Colossus, and this is starting to spin totally out of control here from Minigun. And that's really only because he was able to kind of mitigate the damage here from the storms and he really didn't take any huge storm hits that were really bad for him. You can see the rallies are enormous here from Neeb, just continuing to rally across the map aggressively. And he's in perfect shape here. He's going to end this game, no problem. And we'll see this here in just a little bit as I start to skip forward. See DT is starting to get mixed in just a little bit. Just be ready to scan if that comes up. Again, making the Zealots walk into a position and walk over mines that they really don't want to. Starting to add in Vikings right now. He's going to kill this fourth base eventually as the rallies continue to collect here for Neeb. So doing a great job here. This game's almost over, and he eventually just wears them down. But all the parts about Storm are pretty much talked about, and all the parts about the transitions are pretty much talked about. We're going to really quickly look at another replay. I spent a lot of time on that previous one, and I didn't mean for it to go that long, but still, we'll take a look at another one really quickly, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but most of the concepts were shown there by Neeb that I wanted to talk about. So we want to look at Bomber. He's obviously fighting Crank, and this is another pretty long game. But the whole concept is still the same. You still want to force Protoss to attack at you with Storm. And you still want to demand position with your Storm and get into a good spot where they need to either attack over mines or they need to do something that's going to be pretty devastating to them and they won't get very good trades. Something that's easy for you to micro away against. Because if you think about it this way, if you're being attacked by a lot of Zealots and they have Storm as well and they're attacking at you, then you're going to basically force them to storm their own Zealots as they're chasing after you. And you're going to be microing away from the Zealots anyway. So it's kind of twofold how good it is as far as getting really good trades and as far as making them attack at you. So third command center is really early here from Bomber, and this is what I'm talking about, is another really fast third type of play against the Storm build. Obviously he doesn't know it's Storm yet, but he's just going to continue to play this out. He sees double forge here, that's pretty weird. But nevertheless, he's going to continue playing on here. Getting into mines once again. Mines are a really good option right now against Protoss, and they will be for the long term, as long as Protoss, or as long as the mines keep getting upgraded or buffed the way they have been. So, keeping up on upgrades is a big thing that Bomber needs to pay attention to. He's going to be way behind on upgrades this game. But if he gets good enough connections with his mines, and if he gets good enough micro with his army, he'll be in great shape. So, continuing on the build here. Crank is just scouting to see what Bomber is doing. Nothing too crazy, he's just getting stim, getting his medevac started. Can start off with a little bit of a drop here. Maybe start trying to force out some of these Nexus cannons off the mothership core that are unwarranted. So we're going to see a little bit of that. As far as constant aggression, we will see a video that's more geared toward that here in the near future, so we won't pay too much attention to that. So, Crank getting his Storm, Bomber just getting +1, stim, all that good stuff, getting a second eBay is what he should be doing, but I don't think he has that done or started yet, so we won't see that for quite a little while. Again, the mine drop coming down here, if the Protoss doesn't react properly to these mine drops, they're going to be really annoying. And you can see Bomber continuing to stay on mines here because now he knows there's a Templar Archives on the way. And he knows that the play is going to be Storm. So if you can see the Templar Archives, that's your cue to keep making mines. Maybe you can make Ghosts a little faster as well, but frankly mines are a little bit easier to use, especially since you should be getting used to using them against Zerg anyway. So we'll continue to go forward here. Terran continuing to build up. And of course the faster third base allows him for a lot more production. And if he really needs to, he can fall back to a lot of bunkers and defend from any sort of attack timing that the Storm could come out with. More drops just to try and harass a little bit. You won't get a ton done with drops against Storm. But there always is that opportunity to drop in there, assuming you can see that coming. So right now, Storm is done. Crank is starting Immortals. He has a charge on the way. And from the Terran perspective, He's getting +2 attack and +1 armor back at home, so his upgrades are decent. Combat shield is almost done here. And you never really want to start engaging Storm until combat shield is done anyway, because Marines are so squishy without their combat shields. The Storm will kill them really fast, so make sure you're not missing any timings on that as well. So coming up here is Bomber. This is again trying to bait the Nexus cannon once again. Because of his aggression, he's limited Crank on 2 bases for quite a while. In order to break this, Crank is going to have to attack at his army with Storm, and that's, like we've been talking about, never what you really want to have happen. Back at the other base, like I said, harassment can occur, so you might want to place a bunker here down at your 3rd base to protect against harassment like this. This is one of the benefits of Storm openers, is that counter-harassing with Zealots is really easy, considering the Terran usually wants to be on the map at that point. So just have a solution for those kind of problems that can come up. But Bomber, once again, his positioning right now, it seems silly, but his positioning right now is to prevent a 3rd base and to force Crank to attack at him with Storm, assuming that he wants to ever take a 3rd. So right now the 3rd is super late. Crank is just continuing to harass here with his Zealots, so you want to be aware of that. Even more harassment with some Storm drops, so these are all definitely possibilities that can happen, but as long as you weather this okay and don't lose too much, then you should be fine. Bomber's starting to head back here. So Crank can now take a 3rd base if he wants to, considering Bomber is not on the map anymore. I would have favored him being a little bit more aggressive, but I don't think he was sure about how far the army was going to go out here. So killing off the missile turret is Crank. Just trying to get a little bit of an advantage here. So just try to have solutions for these Warp Prisms. They get really irritating against these types of builds. And now Crank's starting to move out here. And this is what I mean as far as having the bunkers down and ready to go, assuming you take a 3rd base against a Protoss that is not taking a 3rd. So eventually, you just need to be like, I need a lot of bunkers, and maybe you need to be willing to lift off this 3rd and move it somewhere, but you have to hold this. Storm attacking at you is not that good, especially if they have to attack through bunkers. So Bomber kind of being a little bit lazy about getting that part started. He just preemptively starts Vikings. I think that's to push the Warp Prism away. But Protoss is now taking a 3rd. This is definitely an option from them, is just to attack while they're taking a 3rd. So as long as you can just force them to attack at you and get the positioning that you want, you can see, if you had total map vision, you would see that Protoss wants this position, but if you get there first with your mines and stuff and force the Zealots to attack into you, the Storms won't do that much, the Zealots will take a lot of damage. We're going to see Bomber try to hold this here. So mine shots come down, you can see they just wipe out an entire group of Zealots right away. No Storms have come down because Bomber just frankly has the positioning right now. Now the Storms start to come down a little bit. Bomber needs to be careful and not attack too hard into this. Now this is bad because he lost the positioning on his 3rd that he should have been trying to keep. And since Crank has this positioning, Bomber can't just attack in there because the Storm dropping is going to be really easy. You can see Storms come down there, really only lost 1 Templar for quite a large group of Marines. But as long as he just holds his position here, he'll have to attack at him with the Storm. And this is the part where the micro starts to come into play. So Bomber needs to be ready to split up these units and dodge Storms the best he can. And he did go ahead and just lift off that 3rd base, considering he lost that position. So Bomber is going to do something a little bit weird, and he's actually giving up position right now. I'm not really sure why. Trying to come back here. Now he has to attack through Storms, and you can see how devastating this is. He would have been able to handle this pretty easily if he was just already in position. But this is a really weird decision here by Bomber. I'm not really sure what was up with that. But now he has to attack into Storms. That's never what you want. You can see, because the Storm is still trying to attack at him, he still has plenty of time to dodge those Storms, try to walk back a little bit, and eventually he's able to push this away. Those were really random Storms. I'm not sure what was up with that, but more Storms coming down here. Bomber's just barely going to hold this, and because Crank overcommitted so hard, I think Crank should have been happy with just pushing this 3rd base away and going back. But because he committed so hard and because he was constantly having to attack at Bomber with Storms, they didn't really do that much. There wasn't a lot of Storm dodging that needed to be done because he already had the positioning there. And if he had mines with his army, that would have been a lot easier. But now, all of a sudden, if you can ever get to a point like this where you've pushed off his attack, then this should be pretty easy. You can get all the positioning you want. There's no way he's ever going to be able to hold his 3rd base, so he can gain that position. He can just sit right here with his mines and stuff. If the Protoss tries to attack down there, then they're dead. And if he ever especially gets right here with his mines and stuff, which is exactly where he's going to go. And again, the Protoss has to attack into this if he wants to stop this, and there's just not that much here. If that happens, then he's in great shape. Again, just taking a few storms here and there, but because he has this position, the storms are really not doing that much, and he's able just to eventually pick them apart. This game's going to end in just a little bit, but if you can get... I've been in this position before, even 2-base versus 2-base, this happens every once in a while, and this is really irritating to break from a Protoss perspective, considering you need to find ways to make these mines detonate and not kill your entire army. So Bomber, you can just sit here. As long as you have this position, you can break off a few units here and there, maybe just stand them right there and start putting damage on this Nexus. And if the Protoss ever tries to attack into you, they're going to take a lot of hits from the mines. Storm's coming down, and he's just continuing to wear him down here. Now there's no storm energy. Now Bomber has a huge supply advantage. And I want to not oversell this too much. It looked pretty bad when Bomber was back at his base, but Bomber had this third base mining for a long time. And he kept this position out here earlier in the game by not allowing Crank to take a third for a long time. So that was kind of the reason Bomber won this game. It wasn't because he was able to storm dodge or anything crazy like that. It was just a purely economic advantage. And you can see from the timer in this game's going to end pretty soon. And all that happens is that Crank can't ever break this positioning here from these mines. So this video's been really long, and we'll go ahead and just call it good here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys at least got some good ideas as far as what you want to do against Storm. Hopefully I kind of beat it into your head, because a lot of players try to just blindly attack into Storms and wonder why they're not winning. That's not the way you win. The way you win is by getting positioning that they want and forcing them to attack into you. It's kind of a little bit like TvT, where you can try to run into tank lines, but you'll die. And if you do that, that's bad, obviously, but if you force them to attack into your tank lines or your units or whatever, then you'll be great. So hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll be back with more videos very soon, so look out for that, and I'll see you later.